Hey everybody. This time I'm going to talk about what are the deliverables that I'm expecting in project number one. And the two things that we're looking for is a report and the Python notebook that you have used to run your simulation. Um, in particular, for the Python notebook, what your simulation should do and what should be in your notebook is that it should build on the techniques that we've been using from class to create the basic bike share model. And then you're going to create some plots, at least one plot for your report. You'll create it and export it from the Python notebook. In Colab, when you export it, it's accessible, which means you can just drag and drop into a Google Doc or into your Word document, uh, which is very practical. Uh, you should also have organized your notebook into sections. So some sections that talk about maybe the initial functions that you're defining, or a couple of different, at least into two sections, so that the content is more easily parsable by somebody else going in and reading it. And along those same lines, you should be including some text cells or some comments to explain what you're aiming for as you're going through the code that you write. These comments, you don't have to comment every single line of code. You don't have to say a for loop repeats something multiple times. But imagine if you're going back in a month and you want to look at what you've written, you should leave yourself some notes so that you'll, from your past self to your future self, so that you'll know what you were doing. And it's really a helpful thing to have in your code, and it will especially help when somebody else, your classmates or me, are reading your code. Um, Now let's talk about the report. So it's this this is probably the best compared to a lab report from the sciences. And the goal is for you to have an impartial view of the work that you did during the whole process. Basically, this is where you celebrate all the things that you've done and put and organize it in a readable format for the reader. Um, it's going to walk the reader through the steps you went through in the process. So you came up with a problem statement. What is this question that you were investigating? You constructed your simulation. How did you construct your simulation? You then ran your simulation. You gathered some data, uh, and then you need to share this data that you collected. You share it visually so that it's easy to perceive what the data is saying, but also in words, so it's clear for the reader exactly what you're trying to show. And then it situates these results that you have as an answer to the problem statement. This is uh, one report, multiple page report, that has this sole focus of asking a question and then coming up with a way to address the question and then answering the question. All right, so just as we focused on those four different ideas in what we're looking for, these four ideas turn into four different parts of the report that you'll be submitting. And these four parts are going to be throughout the whole semester. We're going to have these four different parts whenever you're trying to convey what you've learned by doing the work of mathematical modeling. We are working at a very basic level this time, And let me go through these key things that over the semester we'll develop more and more, and we'll get better and better at providing this information to the reader. So first, the objective section. This is, you jump into the report and you need to answer, why does somebody care about what you're writing? So you situate your project in the real world, and this is this concrete place that when you were submitting your form, you had to give me an exact place in the real world that your project lies. Situate that for the reader, and from there build up until you get to your project statement, which you should explicitly state as in your objective section. What's the point of this paper, right? So you're not hiding anything. You're not making it a secret what you're investigating. Your goal is to be very clear about what's the background surrounding this question, and what exact question are you investigating. All right, so once the reader knows what your project is about and why they should care about it, then you need to talk about how you approached answering that question. So your methodology is you're going to create a simulation to try to simulate the situation to answer the question that you cared about. So now you need to talk about the decisions that you as a mathematical modeler put into your model. So what type of assumptions went into your model? What did you assume was going to be the case? Maybe you made some assumptions about the ideal situation that your simulation is working in. You made some assumptions about what were the key variables that you wanted to include and especially not include in your model. Then once you've got that background about, okay, I wanted to create a simulation, well, what did you need? How did you approach the simulation process? What was necessary? What were the parameters that went into your model? What were all the different aspects of the situation that you included into the model? So this isn't going to be everything, because your simulation isn't about everything. But what was your approach? And at this point, you can be talking about the ideas behind the code, and it should be clear that the model that you created is different from the book model. Now, I don't want a sentence that says, this model is different from the book model because. It just should be clear about how you approach the problem, that it's different from the book model. And along the way, one decision that everybody is going to have to make is, what are the parameters about how likely a bike or a car or a scooter goes from place A to place B and back. You should talk about how you came up with what those parameters are. What was your philosophy behind those parameters? And so your objective section should be at most a half a page. Your methodology may take up the rest of that first page. It can go slightly onto the second page if necessary. Then we get to the results section. So the results section is you're going to create a diagram about how the bikes are changing over time. And depending on your project statement, you may have some sort of sweep series that gives you another diagram. It's not necessary to have this second diagram in this results section. So it's not just showing the diagram, but then writing a paragraph that goes along with it, which gives a statement of the results. So it should be very explicit. This is what the results are, what the reader should see from the visualization. So you put up a picture, but why did you put up that picture? What is it that is in that picture that that you would want somebody to see when they're looking at that picture? Um, and that's it. This is not a time to talk about what these results mean. This is just time to lay out what the results were and just be explicit about that. The place where you do make some, you do start discussing what these results means is in the analysis section. So in the results section, which is a picture that's maybe at most a quarter of a page at the top, and then your paragraph, the analysis section, which kind of blends together with a conclusion to the whole project, is going to be then the last 2/3 of a page, approximately, maybe a half to a 2/3 of a page. And in this section, you talk about, well, what do the results mean? And then you bring them back to the real world and say, okay, so these numbers are saying something about the real world situation, and then you situate that as an answer to the problem statement that you had at the beginning of the paper. So this is one long story that goes through the why, and then the how, and then the what, and then the what does it all mean. Um, and so it's one coherent story from start to end. So let me give you a little bit of guidance as you're working on this project. So this is an informational essay. It's not a press release. So I don't want you adding fluff or embellishments. Like, I don't want you to say, this was amazing. We are making an amazing bike share to to solve world hunger. No, don't embellish. Don't give me extra fluff. Don't oversell your results. You've got plenty of space to, because you've done so much, you have plenty of space to share what you've done in the course of this project. Be real. This is the I don't want you to say we've been able to simulate all of City Bike through this model. You can say, well, we've created a model that simulates a bike share between two places, and it's okay to say that it didn't work. So that your simulation didn't give you what you set out for it to give you, as long as you can explain why you think that it's not a realistic model, that's just as fine as saying that you came up with a model that did a great job and this is why you think it did a great job. So the focus here isn't on being right or wrong, it's being honest with the reader about about your project and about your simulation and how good it is. Also, this report is to be read by humans, so stay on topic. We talked about how this paper goes, and it talks about one story from start to finish. Make sure that the paper flows well. If you and your group mates decide to split up the paper and one person works on one part and one person works on another part, it should be written in such a way that you can't tell that part A was written by one person, part B was written by another person. And there should be segues that go between the sections. It should lead very gently from start to finish and not feel like it's very abrupt. Also, don't include code or variables in your write-up. Nobody wants to read about T underscore first underscore empty because that doesn't mean anything. Instead, talk about the time when the first um, unsatisfied customer came. Right? You talk in words and explain what your code does. I don't want to see blocks of code in there. I'll see them when I look at your Python notebook. This should be for humans to read and for humans to understand. And last, don't stop abruptly. People like to be guided out of the ideas, and make sure you think a little bit about how you want to release the the reader, the viewer, from what you're talking about. All right, thanks for watching.